We are going to call this meeting to order. And do you want to do introductions and do staff first, or do you want to do?
Yeah, we can do that. So good afternoon, everyone. Happy New Year. If you didn't already see the MACC email that went out, we did have two new staff that we wanted to introduce to you. Joe Speldy, you met last month if you were here, and Joe started as our intern in the spring of 2018 and has been with us since then. And so we extended the offer to Joe to come on part-time as the program assistant, and which is great because he helps run the day-to-day issues of the office, but then when he has free time available, he has somewhat of a planning background. He spent a semester in Copenhagen, Denmark, learning how they do urban planning over there, and so he's brought some insights from that over to us. But Joe graduated with a degree in political science from Point Loma Nazarene University in San Diego, and also works part-time with the Boys and Girls Club, so we're excited to have Joe. And then the other new face that you'll see here is Mara Garecki. Did I get that right? Garecki. We practiced that probably 10 times, and I was like, I'll get it right, but Garecki. And Mara just started with us last week. We're excited to have her as our assistant planner. She graduated from Grand Valley State University with a major in geography and a minor in city and regional planning, and also has spent some time working at the Kalamazoo area MPO, so our peer agency over there. And so we're excited to have her, both great people, talented staff, bringing an energy to the office that we're excited to have. So just very thankful to have them to start the new year with. And so feel free to say hello to them if you haven't already after the meeting.
Yeah, welcome. Thanks. Nice to have you with us. Beside you is Rob, as long as we all know Rob. So I'm going to go around the table and we'll introduce ourselves to you. Mara, pay attention. There'll be a quiz.
Eric Mullen, MDOT Statewide Planning.
Dennis Kent, MDOT Grand Region Office.
Kevin Klangstra, City of Zealand.
John Klein Axel, Allegan County Road Commission.
Jim Story, Allegan County Board of Commissioners.
Terry Hoffmeyer, Lake Town Township.
Russ Deslau with the MACC Authority Board.
Tim Berkman with the MACC.
David Van Genoven with the MACC.
Joe Bauman, Ottawa County Board of Commissioners.
Nancy DeBoer, City of Holland.
Skip Keeter, Park Township.
Terry Nienhuis, Holland Township.
Tom Bird, Ottawa Road Commission.
Glenn Nykamp, Zealand Township.
And Ken DeWeer, Fillmore Township.
Kelly Goward with the MACC. Carolyn Alston with the MACC.
Okay.
Jeff Thompson, Park Township.
Nice to have you back, Jack.
Chris Brown,
Peter Hefner with Radiville Hefner.
All right, thank you. All right, there is no. Jack, do you have public comments? Anything you want to say, or? Thank you, sir. All right. Okay. You have the minutes in front of you, so if there's any other questions or clarifications, I would take a motion.
Move to approve. Support.
Got him? Okay. Any clarifications? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, thank you very much. We welcome Peter Hafner on behalf of Radeveld Hafner LLC. And thank you. He will present the audit.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. My name is Peter Hefner, and I represent Radeveld Hefner, the firm of independent certified public accountants that performed the audit for the year ended September 30th, 2018. And what I brought along was some slides for us to look through to just take a look at how did you end up this year? How does that compare to prior years? My understanding is that you received an electronic copy of the audit with your board packet. And I'm going to go through the pictures rather than directing you to specific pages. But first of all, I wanted to point out our opinion. Our opinion begins on page 1 of the financial statements. And I'm not going to read you all 2 pages of it, but I wanted to provide a summary. First of all, I like to point out that the financial statements are the responsibility of management. It's our responsibility to express an opinion on the financial statements based on our audit. The last paragraph on page 1, I'm going to summarize it. Our opinion is that the financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position, results of operations, and cash flows where applicable of the governmental activities, each major fund, the aggregate remaining funds in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, and that's what I would refer to as a clean opinion, that you are following the principles prescribed by the state of Michigan as well as the Governmental Accounting Standards Board that sets standards across this nation, and that's the highest opinion you can receive. With that being said, I just wanted to take a look at the governmental activities, so the statements that are presented in the very front of the financial statements. This is a full accrual or a business perspective of your operation. So fixed assets are capitalized and depreciated. Long-term liabilities are recorded on this consolidated perspective or the government-wide financial statements. You can see here that your investment in capital assets is pretty much consistent from year to year. You face depreciation on your building and equipment, but as those things depreciate, more expensive equipment, or perhaps, is purchased. So that consistent line is what I would expect to see. And then you can see your unrestricted balance has increased from the prior year. And that'll be presented when we take a look at the fund financial statements, when we take a look at the general fund and your activities with water resources. This is a picture of your expenses versus the charges for services, operating and capital grants associated with your operations. So you have your transportation planning function, and then you have your watershed function, and you can see that your expenses are exceeding your revenues, and these are program revenues. In addition to these program revenues, you also have dues that supplement and result in that differential being funded through the dues. So again, this is your full accrual perspective, looking at your operation from a business perspective. A depreciation is showing up here, which may or may not result in cash exiting your pockets in a given year when you purchase a fixed asset. This is a picture of your governmental activities, just the revenues by source, and you can see that your dues for watershed, your dues for transportation planning, very consistent from year to year, and it's very typical perspective. We work with other metropolitan planning organizations or similar to your operation, and the grants are what fluctuate from year to year. That can depend highly on to what extent is the state interested in you performing XYZ functions within your planning operation or grant funding associated with the watersheds. But you can see the dues in both operations very consistent from year to year. Now here's the picture of your revenues, and again you can see that yellow line, that would be the dues being consistent year to year, and then we can see how the watershed grants are fluctuating and the transportation grants are fluctuating from year to year. When you take a look at the financial statements, there are some notes about what is expected for next year's budget from the grant perspective. So if you take a look at that management's discussion and analysis preceding the financial statements, good place to look when you're taking a look at what should we plan for the coming year, or what did we plan for in the coming year. Also, there are financial highlights within that component of the financial statements. In addition to the audit report itself, we also provide a document that identifies our responsibilities as well as management's responsibilities associated with the audit. And that's provided under generally accepted auditing standards. It's required to be communicated either verbally or in a written format. We've provided it in a written format. We identified a couple opportunities for improvements in your system of internal controls. I talked with management today. They've taken action to implement those, and we will look at next year whether they were implemented. But that's a pretty small, short perspective on the audit. Where did you end up? Where did the dollars come from and go to? And then the communications that we're required to make in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards. Are there any questions that I could answer for you? And if you would suggest we'd like to see some slides of some additional information, we can do that in the future as well. I also like to thank management when we come out to perform the audit. Chris has numerous schedules ready for us to review and audit, and the questions that we ask of management, we get prompt responses, so we appreciate that. We feel as though it's a pretty efficient, effective audit process, and that's due to your management's putting it on the importance scale. So thank you, and I'd be happy to try to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, hearing none. Did you have one, Terry? You do not? All right, hearing none. We need a motion to accept the audit.
So moved.
Thank you, Don. Thank you, Glenn. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Chris, do you have anything you wanted to weigh in on this? You're happy?
Yeah, Rayville Hefner does a great job, so good to have him.
All right. Thank you for your work, Chris. Okay. Transportation program. You want to lead the way, Tim?
Yeah, I'll take this. And before he cuts out the door, I just want to thank Chris as well. Chris, as our financial manager, has done a great job. Always a good resource for me to go to. I appreciate his insights and his longevity with the MACC and as well as other MPOs. He brings a great technical resource to us that I'm thankful for. So well done, Chris. Thank you. So getting into the next agenda item, this is probably our most primary core function as an MPO is to set the Transportation Improvement Program, and we're at that point, as you've heard over the last couple months, of setting the next 4-year tip cycle. And I thought before we get into that, I'd test your eyes to see how well you could read small letters on the screen or numbers. But really what I wanted to do is start out by showing kind of what we have available, and then we'll get into how we intend or how we're proposing to spend those resources. So starting with some of the bad news, as you may have heard, CMACC funding is declining in terms of our annual expectations of cash flow. So Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Improvement Program, up there in the very fine print, you see both Allegan and Ottawa County. Fiscal year 20 is the second column from the right. We were, Allegan as a whole, and I'll get into the breakdown in just a second, was used to seeing $447,000. 21 to 23, that number will go up to $560,000, which sounds like good news. But on the other hand, Ottawa County is going from 1.1 million down to 550,000, so pretty much getting cut in half. Now what that means to us locally, 13% of the population of Allegan is within the MACC area. So these, we take, prorated amounts of these, but 38% of Ottawa is also in the MACC. So when you do the math, it creates a kind of a bigger hit than a benefit to us because of that large reduction within Ottawa County's CMACC allocation. So in total, we're looking at, in 2020, having $480,000 of CMACC funds, but in the years subsequent, 21, 22, and 23, that number will dip to $285,000. So continuing with that theme of what do we have available, the top row up there, straight from MDOT rather, the projection of STP, Surface Transportation Program dollars that we anticipate, right around the 1.5 to 1.6 million. And then there you see that bottom row on the top chart, 480,000 in 2020 of CMACC, but then dipping down to 285,000. Keep in mind 2020 is an overlap year, so the current tip cycle that we're in is fiscal year 17 to 20. So we already have some projects programmed in 20, and that's merely what the bottom list represents. So we have about 1.3 programmed already in STP projects that was determined as part of the last tip cycle, and 472,000 of CMACC. So a net available of what you see on the chart there. Not much in 2020, again, because a lot of that's already spoken for. And then that 1.5 to 1.6 million in STP. That total on the top chart there ends up being exactly right around $6 million. And then we have, also we have to talk about some 2019 dollars that we wanted to reallocate. And we've been talking about this over the last couple months, 320,000 of STP funding 220 came from Lake Town's Emergency Access Project. 100,000 is coming from Zealand's Roundabout project that they have deemed to be excess funding that's not going to be needed for the project. And then 58,000 in 2019 coming from the CMACC side for Ottawa County Road Commission's replacement truck. We'll get into that discussion in a minute, but these are dollars that we also wanted to reallocate as part of the call for projects that went out in the fall of 2018. But there's also one more one-time funding allocation that Eric Mullen sent to me just as we were going through this process of our call for projects. There's a one-time apportionment through the Highway Infrastructure Program that can be used and must be obligated prior to September 30th of 2021. And the max portion is just under $118,000 of that one-time apportionment. So total pot of, including those 2019 reallocation dollars, this money and the $6 million I showed you originally, we had $6.5 million to allocate. Now this is the real strong eye test. Anybody who can read any of these gets 1,000 points. And one extra project added to the tip. No, not really. So we had the call for projects come in on November 16th, and really this is just showing a summary that was in your packet, but of the $6.5 million we have available, we had requests for $15.8 million. So we had our work cut out for us in terms of trying to figure out how to allocate the resources we have amongst these, all these requests that came in. And here's just kind of a graphic showing, if you can see kind of the highlighted areas geographically where those requests were coming in. So all throughout the MACC region, of course, the dotted lines represent non-motorized, solid lines roadway projects, but 37 projects in total. So that's the background of how much is available. Now we'll get into the what are we proposing and what is the technical committee recommending to you as far as adoption of this formal list that we would like to put forward through the TIP development process. So I was already thinking ahead of March, that's right around the corner. And when we had the TIP development committee meet, to make things a little bit interesting, we did it in a selection show format. So we did it round by round, keeping people really on the edge of their seat, wanting to know what the next project was going to be. So you already have the answers in your packet, so there's not a whole lot of suspense, but if you can try to imagine what it was like, it was really impressive. So the also called it the MACC Madness. So getting into what we're proposing, in 2019, again, we have that $320,000 that we would like to reallocate from that Lake Town project as well as the Zealand Roundabout project. And what we're proposing is $220,000 go to the City of Holland's Waverly Road project. This is already partially funded in the TIP, so this is adding to it. It's currently underfunded. In response to some crash data and public input, the city is looking to expand and lengthen a center turn lane as part of this project. This would go to support that, creating a special turn-in area in the Gildan Woods and Doubletree Hotel area, if you're familiar with that portion of Waverly. And then the balance of $100,000 going to the Ottawa County Road Commission for 120th Avenue. This is a mile resurface project in Holland Township. And so that's what we're proposing for 2019. Skipping over to the CMACC side, that was STP. So I mentioned $58,000 became available from the Road Commission as part of a replacement truck that they didn't see as necessary for this year, and so they offered that up. We would like to program that $58,000 into Holland Township's Quincy Street Pathway project. Again, already programmed in the TIP, but very underfunded. They had $464,000 federal for an almost $1 million job, or $944,000. So every bit helps, and so we're proposing that this $58,000 go there. So we're just kind of working through it year by year. 2020, under the Surface Transportation Program, proposing 16th Street in the City of Holland, Collin Park Drive to Lane Avenue. Again, this project is also currently programmed in the fiscal year 20 TIP, but the city would like to expand the limits of the project, taking it further west. So the balance of those 2020 funds of $249,000 we're proposing go into that project to make it a little bit more whole, if you will. Skipping to the CMACC side, not very much available. Again, most of it was already spoken for, as I showed you on that one slide. So about $8,000. We're requesting that go into the MACC Clean Air Program for 2020. 2021 is where we get into, again, a brand new year now, because 2020 was that overlap year. So now we're talking about the higher dollar amounts. So and this is also coincidentally the year that we're proposing that $118,000 one-time apportionment be programmed. So first project you see on the list is the Ottawa County Road Commission's Croswell Street. This is a project located in Port Sheldon Township, a resurfacing and widened shoulder project that is on a key route to the J.H. Campbell Generating Complex for Consumers Energy. It's been some time since there's been a road project also in Port Sheldon Township, in fact, I think since 2000. So that was a high priority of the Ottawa County Road Commission. That's the first project. Second project, Holland's 10th Street. That was a heavy emphasis of the downtown traffic study that the MACC led the effort on, adding a two-way cycle track to the south side of 10th Street. But this portion of the project in particular is for reconstruction of the roadway. So $947,000, almost $948,000 proposed there. And then there's also some advanced construct money that you'll see proposed in 2022, because again, that's a big project for over $4 million, but that was as much as we could apportion to that particular project. And then the last small amount you'll see recurring is the MACC data collection effort of $17,000. We use that to help with traffic counts and other data needs that we have on a yearly basis. So that covers the $1.7 million for 2021. Going over to 2021 CMACC, Max Transit proposed a bus connector route that met a lot of our criteria. It's a 12.9 mile loop serving the Northwest Holland area. It'll operate twice an hour, 6 days per week. And I wrote down this element from the application. It's located within an environmental justice area, increases connectivity within the MACC service area, improves mobility for transit riders, meeting the long-range transportation plan performance targets for state of good repair, mobility, and accessibility. So if that doesn't sound like something Elisa wrote, I don't know what does. But that was a very strong application, meets a lot of our objectives and the criteria of what CMACC is intended for. And so proposing that as the main project under CMACC for 2021. And then some Clean Air Action Program funds for the MACC of $40,000. 2022, working our way through this list, Allegan County Road Commission was up at the top with 60th Street and also 136th Avenue. This is a mill and overlay project located on the borders and in Lake Town and Fillmore Townships. So that scored very well. Also, the Ottawa County Road Commission's Lakewood Boulevard, located in Park Township, resurfacing project of $750,000 is the second one on the list. And then the City of Holland, 40th Street, Industrial Avenue to US 31. This will be coordinated in conjunction with a project that MDOT is planning on US 31. But looking at improving a curve with some super elevation, closing in a ditch with a culvert to enhance some safety in that area and improve operations. That was $300,000. And then I mentioned in the year prior about that 10th Street project and some advanced construct money. We had $262,000 remaining that we're proposing be essentially paid back to the City of Holland for that 2021 project that they'll be handling on 10th Street. And then you see again, MACC data collection funds. 2022 CMACC, Zealand Township submitted a non-motorized pathway project on Quincy Street. $245,000 proposed for this project. You'll see this connect to Holland Township's Quincy Street pathway that will be underway shortly. And that will connect a growing residential area into the existing overall non-motorized pathway network. And then MACC Clean Air funds round out CMACC for 2022. This is the last year, again, of the 4-year tip cycle, now getting into 2023. Ottawa County's Road Commission's Chicago Drive project and 8th Street project. This one will include mill and resurface, and also you may recall the 8th Street pop-up bike lanes. Now this is not in their application, but I'm planting the seeds with Tom now that it would be a great road diet potential for 8th Street, which would also tie in well to the City of Holland's 10th Street non-motorized cycle track option, because it will come up in there. So we've got until 2023 to talk to the Road Commission about pursuing that potential, but that would be an ideal time to look at potentially going from 4 lanes to 3 lanes, and talking with Brett about that as well. Ottawa County Road Commission is also second on the list that year for 64th Avenue. This another resurfacing project with the addition of some paved shoulders. That's $370,000. Allegan County Road Commission's third on the list there with a 4-mile project to do some widened shoulders. That'll be a safety benefit as well as a non-motorized cyclist benefit in Allegan County. And then the last project on the 2023 proposal list, City of Holland Waverly Road. This will follow up with some recent updates by MDOT on M40 with the addition of a second left turn lane from southbound Waverly onto M40. It'll include some widening, some signal improvements, enhancing safety at that intersection. And then again, you see the data collection funds rounding out the balance of $1.66 million. And finally, CMACC. Holland Township submitted a pathway on Greenlee Street, 120th to 112th, proposing that $200,000 go in to support that 1-mile pathway connection. And then Lake Town, in partnership with the Road Commission, submitted a proposal for Blue Star Pathway. It's a big project, $1.3 million, 2.2-mile pathway. Tried to fit that in as best we could, but we're showing $50,000 as a support towards that. Hopefully that'll bolster their application when they submit for a TAP grant, Transportation Alternatives Program, as well as other funding sources through rural CMACC funds and whatever else they can find. But and then closing out with some MACC Clean Air funds. This is a breakdown showing it by agency and percentages, but perhaps more easily read under a pie chart scenario. You see the Road Commission Ottawa County Road Commission taking 41%, City of Holland 33%, Allegan County Road Commission 11%, and then the townships are merely the pathway projects that were discussed under CMACC. And Max Transit 4% with that expanded bus route. So that's a flyover, a lot of information, I know, but that's how we get to our $6.5 million total. 24 projects of the original 37 we were able to fund. You can see pretty good geographic distribution throughout the MACC region on the map there, and that map should be in your agenda packet as well. One thing to note that the technical committee wanted to make as part of their recommendation to you, City of Zeeland did not have a project for a couple of reasons, but one project that they are considering that just wasn't ready to be submitted as a full TIP application is East Main Avenue, State Street to Centennial Street. It'll be a mill and resurface project of upwards of $300,000. The MACC has historically had this illustrative list of kind of the projects that we go to if we find that there's some excess funds available or if a project drops. So we were proposing that take priority on the illustrative list, first position, with the remaining projects coming from those other project applications that were submitted but not proposed to be funded as part of this recommendation. Timeline, so that TIP Development Committee met in December along with the technical committee. They reviewed and recommended this all to you today. So we're asking for your approval of this list, as well as reallocating those fiscal year 19 funds. That'll happen in the form of a TIP amendment, which Carolyn will discuss briefly in the next agenda item. And then moving into the timeline for 2019, we're going to be submitting these projects, if you approve the list, to MDOT for their review, program everything into JobNet. There will be an environmental justice, federal highway, MDOT reviews all of this March through April. And then June 3rd is our special policy committee meeting combining May and June. We'll have a final tip document incorporating all of this for your consideration and approval, and everything is due by the end of June to MDOT for consideration. That's a flyover of everything local. Now MDOT has a list as well, which is what's in front of you, that 11 by 17, a total of 20 jobs that they're looking to program throughout the MACC region in that tip cycle of 2020 to 2023. And I'll hand it over to Dennis Kent to provide any color commentary on that. But MDOT's requesting that that be also considered as part of this discussion. John?
Momentarily, one question.
Yeah.
Backed up about 6, 8 slides, the emergency access funds that were canceled. Now, I don't know with Terry, I thought there was some discussion that hopefully that was going to stay even in Laketown Township if possible. Was that correct, or?
There are some other alternatives, yes.
But it apparently hasn't now?
That was never, I guess, entered into as part of the discussion. It was merely, here's these excess funds that we have available. Let's put them out there as part of the call process. Let it go through the the TIP development working group. Let it be determined by the technical committee as far as a recommendation, and go through the criteria that we had established. But
you feel as though there's been enough analysis of that there isn't a hope out there in Laketown? And
Well, and if I can add to that as well, so they sort of flipped years, and it was Laketown's 64th Street project, so
Right.
that got switched from 2019 to 2018. So in a way, they kind of
Okay.
swapped money.
Right.
And,
Beforehand.
Right, and so then
Okay.
it's really this $220,000.
Yep.
It's really actually coming from the 64th Street job that was originally in 2019. So in a way, they swapped funding, and even though we say the money for these changes comes from the Laketown Access, the Emergency Access Project, really when it gets redistributed, it's that 220 that was originally for the 64th Street job in 2019.
I forgot that side of it.
Swapped, yeah.
Yeah.
thanks, Karen. So, Dennis, if you could add, if there's anything more you want to add as far as MDOT's list that's in front of everyone?
Yeah, just, I can, apologize this didn't get to you sooner. We've had some staff changes, and I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of what we're looking at for the next 4 years in this area. MDOT, just briefly, is divided into 7 regions. We're the Grand Region here. We have 13 counties, and we are essentially allocated funds out of statewide programs that we then select projects from and work with the locals on what some of their needs are, interests is in the trunk line system. But our focus really since the 90s has been more on preservation than expanding the system. You've fortunately been, a beneficiary of the US 31 expansion project on the north side of the MPO, and we've done some work of late on what we refer to as operational improvements, which are something less than a full-scale widening, but looking at improving the operations of specific locations. And we did a major project that the MACC was part of and actually funded part of in the Zeeland I-196 BL M121 intersection area, which is largely completed this year. And then going into 20 through or 19 through 2024 or 23. What are we into? 23, right? And maybe just kind of from a statewide perspective, we are really focused on the freeway system, the interstate freeways, then the non-interstate freeways, and the NHS system, then the non-NHS system. Just maybe going down I-196 as the interstate here. In 19 and 20, we are doing major reconstruction of 196 outside of the MPO, but just sort of following that path between Kent County line and 32nd Avenue. And in addition to that, we're putting a weave merge lane to connect 32nd to M6 eastbound. As we go farther in here, the next segment of that road, which we'll be working on in 2023, is from Byron Road to 32nd Avenue. That project is $43 million. It's in 2023. We'll start working on the crossovers in 2022. $43 million by the scale of the Grand Region 1 year on one project is probably one of the larger single projects we'll do outside of something like a South Belt Line or M231. So that's a major investment in this area. 2021, we're doing major reconstruction of I-196 southbound from 130th to US 31. The northbound direction was done prior by the Southwest region. A couple of years ago, we added some counties to the Grand Region. We added Berry and Allegan, as well as Mason Lake and Osceola on the north. And so we're sort of picking up where some of those projects left off. We're also doing a major rehabilitation in 2022 of US 31 from I-196 to Central Avenue. That's another fairly good-sized project. And we're doing some bridge work in 2020 and 2021. We're doing some ITS work that's sort of largely been focused in the major urban centers, but we're starting to expand that into the smaller areas, smaller MPO areas like Muskegon and Holland. PE is within the current TIP. Construction is outside the TIP. And there's cameras and signs and speed detectors and things. So it'll feed into the entire system that's operated out of the Grand Region in Grand Rapids. Those are the major projects we've got here in the next few years. Can answer questions, whatever you need, or can answer them later too.
You saved some paper with your printing on here too.
Small print. Yeah, small print, plus we do it two-sided now.
Join Tim's class.
Small print. I figure if I can read it, now.
Yeah, Dennis, could you explain for us what the dilemma zone signaling is?
Dilemma zone signaling, that's, I believe that has, I think it has to do with, like warning signs leading up to signals. But I'm gonna have to get you a little more information on that. That's what I believe it is. And this is, some of these projects are in more than one MPO also. And we kind of separate them out by, by MPO. So I do not, I don't know exactly what those are right this second, but that's what I believe they are.
It's a new term to me.
Yeah, yeah. With traffic and safety and signals, we're always trying to, get the signals to operate safer, more effectively. So I can get you more information on that, or if Eric can pull it up on JobNet. Sometimes JobNet has more information, sometimes it doesn't. Just depends. Did you want me to talk about the rest area here or later on, or what was your?
That was a follow-up question I know that Jim had at last month's meeting. Just wanting to know some more detail on the rest area. So.
Well, I can do that while Eric's looking up there, read the job number. Yeah. That rest area is being basically reconstructed, if you will. In 2019, it's going to start at the end of this year. The building is going to be replaced. It's going to be replaced with our more standard two men's, two women's, so that when you close them, you only close one side at a time. We're redoing the truck parking lot so that it will be roughly 10 feet wider than what it is now, at a little capacity there. We're redoing all the sidewalks and the sewer system, basically to make it ADA compliant. And a lot of these are older sewer systems. That particular site probably has not been touched in a major way for potentially since the freeway was open, which is 30, probably 30 years ago over here. So this is a major upgrade for this. They'll bring it more into compliance with with health and safety and ADA standards.
Just to be clear, this is the rest area, where is this one?
Just north of Saugatuck,
Okay.
on 186.
All right.
And there's no additional information other than installing dilemma warning systems.
That's what I think it is. We'll get you more information on that for the next meeting, or I'll send it to Tim. He can send it.
All right, so Tim, you're looking for a motion on the projects you presented, correct?
Yeah, as well as accepting, I guess, MDOT's list. This is what will be then put forward as part of the development of the official tip cycle, which you'll see coming back to you in June.
So moved.
Thank you, Tom.
Support.
Thank you, Nancy. Any further questions? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. There was a lot of information presented well. Thank you, Dennis. All right, next up then would be Carolyn on the Transportation Improvement Program amendments.
Yeah, so essentially with the amendments, I'm just going to run through the list. And you'll pretty much notice that a lot of them reflect things that Tim has already mentioned as a part of the new tip cycle. But just to start at the top, as mentioned with the emergency access project, that still needs to be abandoned within the MDOT's JobNet system. So that's kind of a housekeeping issue to finally get it off of the online platform. Below that is another abandonment. It's that Ottawa County Road Commission truck that Tim also mentioned that is no longer being purchased. So that $58,000, like Tim mentioned before, is going to go to Holland Charter Township's Quincy Pathway project, since those CMACC funds are reopened and useful again. Below that, we do have the Quincy Street Pathway project as well. Sorry, this is the the Quincy Street Pathway project. So the amendment here is not only just to add the $58,000, but it's also going to change around the local funds a bit. And there was some work also needed in JobNet, kind of in the back end of things. Things were not matching up in the internal JobNet system like they were in our original tip. So we're just going in and kind of cleaning up some of that, which then creates the need for this amendment. Because on its own, the $58,000 wouldn't have triggered an amendment. But there's some other work that we need to do in the back end of the system. The next one on the list is 120th. So like Tim mentioned, there's $100,000 left over of STP funds. So we are creating this as a new job in FY19 for this fiscal year. So it's 120th. It's between James and Riley. So it's going to be a new project that's getting added on to our tip for this current cycle that we are in. Below that, we have two projects for Zealand. The first one is for the road portion of Washington that's going to be reconstructed. And then the second piece below that is specifically for the roundabout. We had some work that we were trying to figure out, again, with how it was programmed in JobNet didn't look right to us. The way it's currently programmed in JobNet, if you add the two, it's over a $3 million project, and we've been working with the City of Zealand and the consultants, and the project combined should really only be just a little over $2 million. They are still going to get us some final costs. They're getting the consultant and the engineer on the project. They're getting some more costs this month. So the way it's written here will help us put this new amendment in to get those numbers closer to what they should be within the system. And then once we get some of those final numbers, it should be a relatively small amount of change that should not have to trigger another amendment. Amendments are only needed when we go up that 25% or drop 25% on the total project cost. And what we're expecting for the rest of, for this project in Zealand, it should be quite minimal, and then we'll be able to do that just as an admin modification, just to get those numbers kind of firmed up within JobNet. Below that, we've got Holland Waverly Street job. As Tim mentioned again on this one, there was an extra that $220,000 in FY19 was available. So that is going to be plugged into Waverly's job. And they've also updated recently some information for us on the total project cost as well. And I'm actually going to skip to the very bottom one because this also has to do with Waverly's job for City of Holland. We're abandoning a piece of this. It turned out that the way it was programmed within MDOT's JobNet system, there was a different project number for their advanced construct money, which is in 2020, that AC money, which it should not have its own project number. So we went in and added the AC funding for FY20 into the main project, and so now it's being double counted. So this is just a duplicate that we're going to abandon. And then going up to the second to the last one, MACC Transit. This one we were just made aware of last week, right before the packet went out, that MACC Transit, there was a duplicate job as well. So this job actually was two separate jobs that are also programmed within JobNet that add together to make this overall job. So it too is a duplicate that we can remove from the system. And so it's just a really quick run through. Any questions on any of the amendments? Again, Tim kind of went through them all, a lot of the changes because of what we're doing with the TIP as well.
Okay, questions? Carolyn, thank you very much. We do need a motion on this. Yes, sir. Thank you, Terry. Okay, thanks.
And who was the support on that?
Joe.
Joe.
Thank you, Joe.
Okay.
Okay. All right. And then
All those in
next-
favor, say
Oh,
aye.
sorry.
Aye. Thank you. All right, back to you,
Jumping right
Carolyn.
in. Okay, and then again, we can make more jokes about small text. So the next project I'm going through is the FY18 federally obligated project list. I figure that even though it's small here, if you do look at it on the PDF, you can zoom in. So I figured if you really want to get some detail, PDF's the way to go on this one. Every year around this time, we send our federal obligated project list to FHWA and FTA. These lists usually come out around this time of year since it's from the prior year. So we wrapped up FY18 in October, and then by December they want the list before the end of the calendar year. So this list here, just to give you a little bit of background, I split it out two different ways. So I split it out in two sections. The first section is our area projects, Allegan and Ottawa County exclusively. And then I also separated out for you so it's not added into the overall total the same way, region-wide projects. So some of these will be MDOT projects that are not necessarily in our county, but again, they may have been region-wide. So those total federal dollar amounts there may have not actually been just the MACC money, but it may have been throughout the overall West Michigan region. And so it's always kind of just nice to see how much investment was made in our area. For federal funds, there was about $12 million, close to $12 million in federal funds that were designated to our area in FY18. So it's great news. And then looking back, it's not written out here, but I thought I would vocalize it to you. For FY18, when the original 17 through 20 TIP was produced back in 2016, the STP funds that we were expecting for FY18 was a little over 1.3 million, and then local CMACC funds was just below 500,000. So overall, we were looking at likely getting just about 1.75 million between STP and CMACC for FY18. This is again back in 2016 when the TIP was produced. And so then I just kind of went through and added up what we did end up getting obligated. And it looks like it's just a little bit over that. So we got about 1.88 million, about $130,000 more. What I'm assuming happened is since 2016, there must have maybe been some excess funds available, possibly. So it looks like we actually ended up getting maybe a little bit more than what we expected back in 2016 when the tip was produced. So a lot of information here. This is purely just informational. It does not need a vote, but this was sent over to FHWA and for their information, what they need in the office. But it's kind of just nice to round out the year and let you know how much we had an investment in our area. Any questions on this? Okay, all right, that's it for me then.
Thank you, Carolyn. And Eric, any comments from MDOT?
Oh, no, I just agree that, those dollar amounts were estimates in 2016, and just as we're building the 20 through 23 based on estimates, they're likely to not be correct by some magnitude, either higher or lower, but that's where we have monthly meetings to adjust the things that we know when they come due, so we were pretty good that period anyway. So.
Are you our main contact going forward?
For statewide planning, yes, yeah. But I mean, Dennis and the Grand Region for project information, I think the Grand Region is always probably the better place to go.
Great.
Closer to the project.
Yes, sense.
I have a question. At our meeting in Zealand a couple of months ago, we discussed funding, and we discussed the question of the fact that the Michigan sales tax also applies to the purchase of gasoline and fuel. And I am reluctant to mention diesel fuel because I am not pointing my finger at the trucking industry. It's obviously a very important industry. It's a noble industry, and I wouldn't want my words especially to reflect about the fact that for a number of years we've had we have seen a lower tax in the state of Indiana and Ohio on diesel fuel, which is, quite frankly, a temptation for truckers to buy their diesel fuel in those two states. I'd like to suggest, if I may, that we take a study, two studies, one on this question of taxing regular gasoline, taxing gasoline, I should say, on both premium and regular, obviously. Why can't we exempt those fuels from the Michigan income tax? Or if we don't do that, why don't we get credit somehow for that difference? Since the meeting in Zealand, I have not seen anything in the newspaper anyway about whether or not there is any state effort to correct that, what I consider an unfairness in our taxing system. And if I may, I'd like to suggest that our legislators be contacted. I may be wrong, but has anybody around the table here seen any thing in the paper that is proposing to correct that injustice? I don't see any hands. So perhaps our MDOT representative, Perry, who's here, could inquire into that. Is there any legislative action pending or proposed? Then on the question of the Indiana, Ohio situation, I think we should know how much revenue that we are losing, tax revenue, diesel tax revenue we are losing by that apparent injustice. Of late, and rightly so, we've had a lot of articles about fixing our potholes and fixing our so-called transportation infrastructure. And those are noble efforts, and perhaps this study might reveal some ways that we can correct this, what I consider unfairness.
I can ask our policy folks on that. I know that the Indiana, Ohio, the border taxes across the board are always an issue in any tax debate, as for whether it's fuel or cigarettes and alcohol taxes. You know, it's always been part of their discussion, but I'm not sure if we quantified it through a study or not. But I'll look into that to see if there's some information available on that.
Yeah, that'd be great. Maybe work with Tim a little bit, have a conversation, would be helpful. So, thank you. All right. Watershed. Kelly.
All right. Just a couple quick kind of annual updates. In early December, about a month ago, we had our Watershed annual meeting. I know some of you were present at that. Just wanted to provide a brief recap of that meeting. The presentations that were given at the meeting are posted on the MACC's website. We had 4 student groups from Hope College this year do presentations of their semester-long research in the Advanced Environmental Seminar advised by Dr. Ed Hansen this semester. And so they all focused on some aspect of heavy metals. So I think there were some very interesting presentations of the work that they did that generated some interesting discussion. I don't have copies of their final papers yet, but those will be provided shortly, hopefully. They've been turned in and graded as the end of the semester. And as soon as we have those available, we'll post those on the website, but the presentations are currently posted. Also at the annual meeting, we always award a Stakeholder of the Year. This year we awarded it to one of our long-term volunteers, Rick Bosch. He pretty much does everything that we ask him to do, and he suggests other things to do. He spent quite a bit of time in the MACC office archiving documents and making sure we had copies of documents, especially studies on the lake throughout the years. And so we've got the work that he did. You know, he made sure we had copies of everything in a box, copies of everything digitally. We have not done anything to make those all public yet. That's kind of the next step, but he spent a lot of hours in the office and elsewhere making sure that we had copies of reports and studies related to the watershed and the lake. And then he volunteers for just about everything that we do. He's been out with us at river cleanups consistently. He's volunteered with the macroinvertebrate monitoring, and he's been out doing road stream crossings. And then not just with us, but also he's an avid volunteer with Ottawa County Parks. He lives in the Villas of Holland and convinced his association to adopt Paw Paw Park. So he regularly recruits volunteers to go out and take care of that park. He works closely with park staff too to identify and let them know when there's invasive species populations. He brought to their attention a significant erosion problem on the river that we've been kind of looking with the parks at some funding opportunities to be able to fix that. They've got a design to repair that because Rick brought that to their attention. And then he's certainly been involved with the Outdoor Discovery Center and Project Clarity, volunteering for river cleanup or river festival, water festival, and some of the other monitoring efforts. He's one of our citizen science monitors doing weekly readings throughout the summer. So as a stakeholder of the year, it was really a recognition of many years of service and his continued service. He continues to be actively involved, and we just felt this was the time to recognize him for that. So that was kind of the highlights of the annual meeting. Again, the presentations are on the website. A couple other presentations from that meeting included an update on Project Clarity and then the Annis Water Resources Institute monitoring from the 2017 season. We don't have their 2018 monitoring report finalized yet. So those, again, the presentations are on the website. Questions about the annual meeting? Okay. So then the other thing I wanted to just highlight is our phosphorus total maximum daily load annual report. As part of the voluntary agreement we have signed with the Department of Environmental Quality, we have to submit an annual report of our progress toward meeting that TMDL goal. And that's due every November 1st, so this report was turned in November. I do have a hard copy of it if anybody wants to see it, and it is posted on our website as well. But just some highlights from the report. So again, the voluntary agreement, the MACC and its members signed that in 2000. It was re-signed in 2010. Every 10 years they take a look at that. So in 2020 we'll be probably looking at that again and re-signing it because we are not meeting the goal yet. Our goals are, there's kind of two numbers that we're really looking at. And it's the number that they set is how much phosphorus can the lake receive on an annual basis and meet water quality standards. And so that number is 55,000 pounds per year. That's really difficult to measure, how much phosphorus enters the lake. Most of it's coming from rain, so that's really difficult to measure. We can measure the point source discharges from the wastewater treatment plant, Mead Johnson, other industrial facilities, and we know exactly what's coming from those, but everything else that's coming from rain is really hard to measure. So what we're really going for is that in-lake concentration, that 50 parts per billion of the water in the lake. Within the TMDL, there is a distinction between those point sources, those industrial dischargers, and the non-point source that comes from rain. So 20,000 pounds a year is allocated to point sources. So again, we get those reports from them. We know exactly how much is coming from those point sources, and I do have a graph that summarizes that, and that's part of the report that goes to the state every year. And then those non-point sources, we really just do our best to model based on the activities that we've done, especially the agricultural best management practices. If we've done any urban kind of green infrastructure practices, we can model what the phosphorus reductions are from those, but they're not measured numbers. So we've got measured numbers from the point sources, modeled numbers from the non-point source reductions. So in 2018, what we were able to gather from the projects that we know about, there certainly are other projects that are done that we may not know about that we're not a part of. But in total, from both our efforts at the MACC and Project Clarity, we documented just over 5,000 pounds reduction of phosphorus for the year. And then on a 6-year total, and this is just since I've been with the MACC, I've been kind of keeping a cumulative tally. That totals about 24,000 pounds of phosphorus. And this really is our goal to reduce by 91,000. So we're certainly making progress, but we've got a ways to go. And again, keeping in mind that those are really modeled numbers. I did go back and look at earlier reports, and there's inconsistency in the annual reports from 2000 to 2011, but the best number I could come up with was about 23,000 pounds of reduction that was documented during that time frame. So when you add these two numbers together, then we're getting about halfway there. And that's assuming that all of these reductions continue on an annual basis, which they may or they may not, depending on the practice. So here's a look at these point source data. So again, 20,000 is what is allocated to the point sources. And then this is our 4 major point sources in the watershed. CDR pigments is no longer functional, but it's was for these, I think, till 2007. So that's why it still shows up on the graph. They were a very small portion of the overall. The major source of phosphorus is the Holland wastewater treatment plant, which is to be expected because they are processing a lot of waste and that has a lot of phosphorus in it. But again, they're operating below their limits, and they have done some improvements the last couple of years. You can see the numbers have dropped because of upgrades that have been done to both the Zeeland and the Holland wastewater treatment plants. So again, operating well below their limits in the TMDL. And then just a note here that 2018, this is only through October because we have to have that report in November, so it doesn't represent the full calendar year. The rest of the years, that's a calendar year total. And then just from the monitoring data, that's something else that we do put in. So this should not be a new graphic. We looked at this last year. So this is that 2017 monitoring data from the Annis Water Resources Institute that's being done as part of Project Clarity. So our phosphorus number was around 140. Again, we want to be down to 50. It fluctuates a lot from year to year, primarily based on the weather. We are a very weather-dependent system. Most of that phosphorus is getting in with rain events. So wet years, we tend to get higher phosphorus levels. There's not an exact correlation there, but it's a fairly consistent trend. In wet years, we have higher phosphorus levels. But the overall general trend, especially these last few years, is it's certainly getting better. We're going the right direction. And also keeping in mind that this is not continual readings of phosphorus. They take several samples and average them to come up with this number. So it's based on a single or several points in time, but certainly not representative of the lake on a daily basis. I think that's all I have. Any questions about this? Again, I have a copy of it if you want to see the report, or it is on the website as well. Yeah.
When you submit your annual report to the DEQ, do they ever respond to that?
No. Just to acknowledge they received it, but I've never received any comments or questions back from them. Yeah.
Kelly, the memo that you sent attached to this said we hope to achieve in-lake phosphorus concentrations of 50 parts per billion, but the last one from 2017 is 140 parts per billion. So we're still far off what our goal is. Is 50 parts per billion reasonably attainable based on what you've developed now over the steps we've taken and projects and the monitoring you've done?
I mean, it should be attainable. It's actually, that's a higher number than is allowed for other water bodies, like Lake Allegan, the number is lower. So that number is based on the monitoring and modeling that the DEQ does on what a water body, the size and with the inputs of the watershed can handle. So, I mean, I believe it's based on sound science that number should be attainable. I think it goes to show you that the history here is that there's a lot of work to do. And keeping in mind, too, that it didn't get this way overnight. It was a long history of land development that ended up with the lake the way that it is, and it's going to take a while to reverse that, especially as more development continues to happen. I mean, we're trying to catch up, and more is happening. So I think, we're making progress, but then there's still things that are happening to increase the phosphorus load that we're not addressing. It's a fairly small watershed in the grand scale of watersheds, 175 square miles, but it's really difficult for us to treat every single square mile like it really needs to be treated to get to the numbers we need to get. But again, progress is being made, and I think that's the best that we can hope for with the resources that we have.
Kelly, when you talk about new development, so is there more restrictions that can be put on new development to meet standards? Yes,
and those are coming. The counties, Ottawa County, Allegan County, as part of their stormwater permits, the MS4 permits, there are some new standards that they have to meet, and the MACC has been working with the two counties and actually with Muskegon County as well, and then the City of Holland independently, but at the same time working with the same consultant to revise the standards to meet the new criteria. And one of those criteria is a water quality standard to treat any runoff from a development to a total suspended solids level, a limit. And then there's also a second standard for channel protection, so the release rate from the site so that it's not causing erosion in the receiving channel, which that certainly transports more phosphorus. So we are waiting for the consultant to finalize those documents, which should happen this month. And then it will just be the Joe Bush's office and Denise Miedemar's office in Allegan County as far as a timeline to roll those out. And we've been talking at various levels with some of the developers and engineers that, hey, these are coming, they've seen them, they're prepared for that. We really need to talk to all the planning commissions to make sure they understand. The City of Holland has certainly already done that. They've kind of forged ahead from what the county's timeline has been. But yeah, so those will be coming.
Callie, would it be fair to say at the watershed meeting that what you said was basically the position of Project Clarity, MACC, and everyone, that the problem was a long time in the making, progress is going, but it's incremental. It's going to take time, whether it's you, Dan Callahan, Rob, Joe Bush, it's going to take all of everyone working together.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
The watershed meeting, it was my first one. It was at Holland City Chambers, which is a really nice place to be. You were good. The Hope College students are absolutely fascinating to watch. At 1920, they work with their professor. They do their studies. They are bright. They are articulate. They are fun to listen to. It gives you a lot of hope, and it makes me realize I didn't compare with that kind of, those guys are bright. For where I was at 20, these guys are really sharp. It's fun to listen to them. So thank you for your part in creating that. If you haven't been to that, it's fun.
I would echo that. I normally try to attend them, but my reaction is the same. They are brilliant young people, and as they walk through step by step, even I can understand it. So it is a great job.
It really is.
You really have to dumb it down a little bit.
Thank you, Kevin.
Okay, Tim.
All right, just under administrative issues, first of all, there was not an executive committee meeting in December, so you didn't see a summary on that, but we will be having the next one a week from today, next Monday. On the budget side of things, just the report through the end of November, because that's all we had when this went out. First 2 months into the fiscal year, revenues are at 34%, expenses are just under 14%. So be happy to answer any questions you have on that.
Thank you, Tim. Terry, thank you for hosting.
Very, very short. We're running a little bit over. As many of you may know, our longtime township clerk, Wendy Van Heis, announced her retirement back in November. We have interviewed people. We've made an offer. She has accepted. Our new clerk will be Michelle Saul. She is a longtime chairperson of our Parks and Recreation Department, so she will be attending her first meeting this week, Wednesday. On a bright note, back about 2006, when all of the bad things hit us, we were issuing permits at about the $20 million rate. That went down dramatically. This past year, we issued a little over $22 million in new construction, so we feel we're back in there and working. Let's see. There was a news story in the Holland Sentinel on Comcast and their rebuild over Laketown Township, and they were almost accurate with most things that were in there. I sometimes take exception with them, but they accurately reported that Comcast is having a difficult time getting permits for pole attachments from consumers, and it just made me think. The only people probably worse than consumers on getting them to move might be CSX, but probably the best is on Board of Public Works. They are on the spot, and they really do work hard. One final thing, I think some of you are aware that we are negotiating. We have a state grant to acquire property at Laketown Beach on Lake Michigan. And without going into detail, we have 3 property owners we're dealing with. We have settled with 2 of them, and we believe we're close on the 3rd. So that'll be more of an announcement for the next time around. But anyway, thank you all for coming. Love to have you here.
Thank you, Terry. Any other member comments? Very good. The quiz will be on your desk when you're back, so good luck. The next meeting will be in beautiful Holland Township, Riley Street Fire Station, February 25. Until then, we are adjourned.
Okay.